the Spirit with glorious light. Confident living cleanses my soul, giving the Spirit fullest control. Confident living rights every wrong. Dynamic.
I'm Mike Costello, and I'd like to talk to you in the next few minutes about the endings in your life. All of us face beginnings and endings. There are things that come into our lives, and there are things that go out of our lives. We're usually happy about the beginnings, new directions, new jobs, but sometimes we have difficulty dealing with the endings of life. Really, when we look at the endings of our lives, those things that come to an end, they create for us opportunities. And we believe that we live in our minds and not in the world. And so the challenge of our life is to change our way of thinking when circumstances and situations present themselves that may challenge us. The end of an experience is a place where we can move into a new beginning. But as we deal with endings in our lives, whether it's the end of a relationship, the end of a job, the end of a time in our lives, whether it's the end of a place where we've been, we have a tendency to either understate the endings of our life or to overstate them. And endings need to be for us punctuations of life. If we understate the endings of our life, we may not gain from them all of the things that we could gain or learn. And if we overstate the endings of our lives, the end of a relationship, the end of a job, the end of a time in our lives becomes for us a paralyzing and fearful event. And so what we want to do is to challenge ourselves not to understate and not to overstate, but to live in the midst of the endings of our life so that we can understand that they are new beginnings, and that as endings come, we have an opportunity to do something else. One of the things that we invite you to do as you examine your life and deal with circumstances and situations that present themselves in your life experience is to know and understand that no experience is lost. Every experience through which and into which our lives move brings to us a new dimension of understanding, a new opportunity for learning. In our tradition, in our faith, in our philosophy, in New Thought, we believe that life is the school of the soul. So each of the days of our lives, each of the experiences that come into our life experience, bring to us a learning experience, a school for our inner being. And as we turn within and detach ourselves from the externals of life, we begin to be empowered and strengthened so that we can go through the experiences and grow through them. Every ending brings a new beginning. If we could enter into the process of ending something with that consciousness, our thought process would change, and the hurtful or the negative endings in our life would not damage us, paralyze us, or stop us as much as they have in the past. In human life, our tendency is to attach, engage, and interlock. We do that with all of the people around us. We do that with our lives because we are not, as beings, as human beings, open and receptive as we should be to the realities of change. If we could disengage from the experiences, disengage from the relationships that we have, and not be so attached to the way that life is, we would be able to deal with endings much the same way as we deal with beginnings. A new process, something into which we move, not somewhere that is a dead end with nowhere to go. So often when we face an ending in our life, we are disoriented. We enter into a time of questioning ourselves, our spiritual values, questioning the values that have governed our lives for so long. We ask questions like, who am I? What is really real? What is my life about? We begin to ask questions, and as the questionings take over our being, and as the questions bombard our thought process, we become more and more immersed in the circumstance, more and more immersed in the ending. If you have a job that you've had for many, many years, or for a short period and you're attached to it, and something happens, either you're replaced, you're forced to move, you have to leave, that is an experience in life that brings us to a point of questioning. If a relationship ends in divorce and marital strife so often, the questionings become so paralyzing. And as we begin to ask ourselves why, as we begin to look at these deep and philosophical questions, we focus on the problem and we don't move out of that experience. We become more and more disoriented. And as our disorientation increases, we tend to hold on to the things that are comfortable, the things that we wanted and the things that we liked. And it may be that the things that we wanted and the things we hoped for and the things that we liked are not going to continue to be in our lives. But as this disorientation builds, as this engagement and interlocking reaction in our mind begins to build, we are immersed deeper and deeper in the experience, and we're not open and receptive to the new beginnings that come to us after an end to a circumstance or situation in our lives. We're invited to honor the endings in our lives. That may sound difficult, but we live in our minds and not in the world. We are able to change the way that we think. And as soon as we change the way that we think and stop trying to change the environment, change the experience, change the world, but instead change our way of thinking, we're able to honor and identify the fact that we have come to an ending in our life. If it's a job, if it's a house, if it's a relationship, if it's a period or stage in our own individual life or growth, coming to the point of understanding and embracing the concept of endings and honoring those endings, being thankful for what brought us to this point, but understanding and realizing that now we're going to be moved in new and wonderful directions. Now there is going to be a new beginning, a new way of life. Probably the most profound and painful of these processes of endings is the ending of the relationship that we have with friends or family in the process that we call death. That is what we see in a human sense as the ultimate ending. But as spiritual beings, we know that life is eternal. Most of us embrace that concept in some way or some shape or some belief system. But when the death comes, it seems to be an ending that is an absolute end. And we go deeper into the experience. And we go down, down, down into depression, into the questioning, into the disorientation, and into the engaging and interlocking with the one who has gone on. Instead, what we're invited to do is to disengage, to orient ourselves to the fact that this circumstance and situation has occurred. This is where we are. Whatever has ended in your life and my life has ended. And by honoring and accepting the fact that endings are a part of the process of life, we can grow from and go through the endings into a new direction and a new life. We open ourselves to the receptivity of a new way of living, to a new way of life. But in order to do that, we have to open ourselves to a new way of thinking. For most of us who have spiritual values, and certainly in our tradition and faith, we have those in a great and real way, it is meaningful for us to turn to God or turn to that which is divine. It doesn't have to do with what the church to which you belong, has nothing to do with denominations or religion. It has to do with our ability to go within, to connect with that which we claim and know to be divine, and to know that that divine principle, that divine presence will guide and direct us in new ways in the midst of every ending of life. Faith is everything if we're going to transform ourselves. And faith in something that transcends the physical is an absolute imperative. Because if we have a belief and if we know beyond a shadow of a doubt that there is a life, there is a reality, and there is presence beyond this physical, then we can change the way that we think about physical experiences because we know that there is a spiritual undertowing, a spiritual undergirding, and a spiritual dimension and reality that transcends. To transform our way of thinking, to transform our life, we begin by transforming, transcending, and changing the way that we think. Earlier in this talk, I said we live in our minds and not in the world. We absolutely live in our minds and not in the world. As you face endings in your life, as you face challenges in your life, as you face changes that bring you to a point that seems to be an ending, you are invited to know that that ending simply brings to a close a chapter, an experience in life, and that there will be a new beginning, there will be a new life, and there will be a new direction. The continuity of life tells us and teaches us that at every ending, we are where we started, which is at a new beginning. And it is within us. We have the innate ability, we have the strength and the empowerment through the divine connection that we have to make every ending a beginning for something new and wonderful. We believe in prayer as a centering force, and we'd like to pause at this point in the program to invite you to enter into a time of reflection and meditation with us. Eternal God, we gather our hearts and minds together in the reality that there are really no ends in life, that things do not end, but that new beginnings come to take the place of experiences, of people, of circumstances and situations. And as we open ourselves to this divine reality of endings as new beginnings, the horizon is always open through your divine light and life. We know these things in the name of faith, in the name of hope, in the name of love. Amen.
That was a wonderful concept, that the beginning is with the end and the end is the beginning.
It's an important concept, because if there's one reality of life, it is the constant changing and ebbing of life. And so there are constantly, in every life experience, in yours and mine and everyone's, going to be a lot of endings. And unless we make those endings openings for new beginnings, we can really close the door to life.
That's true. And we have so many wonderful books available to us today about life after death. And of course, you referred to life after death and as one of the great beginnings, and indeed it is. And there are those marvelous books that tell us firsthand experiences of when people have gone over into God's great country and what they found there. And very often, the things that seem so important to us here on earth are not that important there.
Mm-hmm. I think fundamental to that concept is that we believe that the world that we see is real.
Yes.
And it is real only to the extent that it helps us in our spiritual pilgrimage and quest. And so when we transcend that reality of the physical world, we learn, and certainly when we step over into eternal life, we realize that so much that happens in the physical, though it seems important and it seems sometimes devastating, it is limited to the physical realm. It's not that important.
And for example, the way we view others is not that important. And a friend of mine, Susie Ward's son, died 14 years ago. And this year he has given her information for a book, Within and Beyond. And he was saying that if you don't like someone there, you don't have to do anything but be polite when you see them. You're not obligated to reach out to them, and they don't care if you don't reach out to them, because everyone is living from their higher self. Those things that we think are courtesy and tact and so-called tact is often just phony hypocrisy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And the physical issues of life are not that important.
Yeah, it's a wonderful thing to know that we can read those books and know what to expect when we go on the inner. Matthew was telling his mother that it was easier for him when he got there. He died very suddenly from an accident, and because he had read certain books, and one was by Dr. Moody, and that was helpful for him. So these things we know and learn here on earth do help us, or really come in great stead when we go over.
Mm-hmm. And the preparation that we go through in accepting endings in the little things of life and in some of the bigger things of life really prepare us for the ultimate ending. And of course, that's the culmination of what Christian truth is all about, and that is that life is eternal, and that we're all moving toward the process of stepping from this physical realm into the invisible realm. And then some of us, as you and I believe, and others in our movement believe, we step back into the physical realm. So we're moving constantly from spirit into the physical world, from the physical world into the spirit world, and all of this is taking place for millions of people simultaneously at the same time. So we have people moving from this earthly consciousness or human consciousness or race consciousness into spirit consciousness and back and forth. And that creates for each of us on an individual level a deeper understanding of the fact that endings bring to us new beginnings, and also it prepares us for that ultimate transition.
Yes, and how we live our life determines what happens to us when we do go over, because if we live with integrity, then we don't change a great deal when we're there, because it's more familiar to us. Yeah. And the thoughts we think here builds everything. Is like you say so beautifully, that we live in our minds and not in the world. It's the thoughts we think that matter. And so then on the inner, everything is built by way of thought. I've learned something else too, that they help each other on the inner. It's not just a single endeavor. You don't, if you want to create specific clothing for yourself and you're not able to, there are those who are attuned to you who will just automatically help you. And then when they build the public buildings, it's a group effort, and they all work in concert together. And then they do that same thing, helping us here on Earth, and they send their energy here so that we can use that energy in a very profitable way.
It's the dynamic of thought or mind. And we talk often about the concept of divine mind, or the mind of God connecting with our mind. And when the physical mind dies or ceases to exist, or even when it operates in the physical realm in our daily lives, our subconscious mind is connected with what some have called the superconsciousness,
Yes.
which is that connection of mind which we always have with God. And that connection is always there. An interesting concept that you touched upon was the fact that, and we certainly believe it, is that when we go over to the other side in the transition that we call death, life doesn't change. You know, so often people believe, especially traditionalists believe, that it's a different dimension, and certainly it is, but that we're going to immediately see things differently, we're going to perceive them differently. And we believe that as we step out of this physical body, our mind and our superconsciousness, if you will, or the connectiveness of our mind to the mind of God, remains the same. So we're still going to have the same problems. The only thing is that we're going to change our physical manifestation, and we'll see more clearly there on the other side.
What I hear you saying is, if we're self-limiting here, we're self-limiting there. And if we want to limit ourselves, then we're just holding ourselves back. But if we want to know that all of life is limitless, and all on the inner is limitless, then that's how we will function.
And taking it a step further, many people who have terrible problems in life or unresolved issues within themselves often believe that as soon as they die and pass into spirit, that these issues are going to be gone. And of course, they'll be viewed differently, but they're still going to be there. And it's especially true for the people, and I think it's a sensitive issue, but one that we should probably touch on, those people who commit suicide.
Yes.
Because often religions tell us a variety of things about people who commit suicide, and the one thing that we believe without a doubt is that that person makes the transition with the same difficulties.
Exactly.
And when they wake up or open their eyes on the other side of life, the same problems are still there. The only difference is that on this side, there were those who may have been planning and trying to help. There may not have been. But the one guarantee we have when they go to the other side, there's going to be someone there to help them. But the problem's not going to just go away.
Yes, that's so important that we remember, and I think that's where they've gotten the idea that people go to purgatory or hell or some indefinite place. Suicide does, because it's because they make their own hell, because they don't have the physical body to work things through. And we've been taught that when we need the physical body in order to work through problems, and it's so much easier, we can work things out so much more quickly here on Earth because we have that physical body than if we were on the inner, where everything is made more easy for us. But we also, as you said, don't realize that what we can do, what we're capable of doing. If so, we would have done it here on Earth. The suicide would have done it here on Earth. So they're just stymied, self-stymied.
And as we said in the talk, life is a school of the soul. And so our purpose here is to learn the spiritual lessons that we need to learn. If we fail to learn them here, we'll learn them on the other side, or we'll learn them in another experience. We're going to learn what we need to learn. We're going to progress to the point where we need to be, which is to the Christ consciousness and our awareness of the unity that we have with God. And that is true for everyone. It has nothing to do with church or with religion or with ritualistic practice. It is a process through which every spiritual being is going and growing. And it is that learning process. And so the more that we can learn here in the physical, the more that we can experience and understand and connect with the presence of God, the better it will be for our spirit growth. But we're going to be all right.
Yes, we definitely are. And we have those wonderful books to show us that what you just said has absolutely been experienced by those who have gone over and have come back to give us that information. And of course, we believe that life is an evolutionary process, and we're in process of evolving ever to a higher level. And I think we're in that stage of our evolutionary process where there's a thinner line between the inner and the physical. And so a lot of these truths are coming to us now because we're only just now, as a mass humanity, capable of grasping and living the truths as they really are.
Yeah. That race consciousness that we talked about, or the consciousness of the physical, the belief that the physical life is the real life, or the ultimate life is being transcended. And as we move into this last part of the last decade of this
Yes.
century, and we move into also a new age, we are accelerating the changes, accelerating the growth, accelerating the experience. And because of that, we're experiencing more and more endings.
Yes.
And those endings are just preparing us for the ultimate ending, which will be revealed to us as nothing more than a new beginning.
Yes. And I believe our physical bodies are being worked on from those on the inner or from our own higher bodies using that knowledge that they have, because in our subconscious, all the knowledge of all time is available to us if we just open enough to hear it and see it. There was 2 or 3 years ago, I napped in the afternoon, which is highly unusual for me, every day for a week. And I never in my life had ever napped more than one day in a month or two or a year. And so I asked in my meditation, what's happening here? What's going on? Because I knew something unusual was occurring. And I was told that the meridians of my body were being rearranged. And that may sound far-fetched and weird, but I know that that was happening because we all have a force field around our bodies. And I believe that many people, and if it happens to one, it happens to many. So many people were having their force fields around their bodies changed so they could receive the higher impetus from the inner planes, so they would be able to take that velocity of power that comes through to us in our meditations and in our just day-to-day living.
In preparation for changes that are
Exactly,
taking place.
for those changes, for those changes.
Yeah. And those changes, as they take place in the physical, one of the other things that we believe in is a very major part of our faith is the process of healing. So the power of God does strengthen our physical bodies, does heal our diseases and our infirmities, but it is not in the healing of them that God's power is demonstrated or confirmed.
Yeah.
It is just a process through which we can move. So there are healings, and for some people, endings are brought on by illnesses.
Yeah. Yes, and some of us remember what it's like on the inner planes, and we crave to go home to God. And I think some of us, people might call it a death wish. It's not really the death wish in a traditional sense, but I think some people really don't want to be healed when they're ill because they want to go. They feel that they feel this nearness of the inner planes of being, and so they really want to go.
And that, again, is our longing, our spiritual longing for an ending and a spiritual understanding of the fact that there is an ending.
Yes.
Yeah. And we want the ending because we know that as we reach the end of an experience, there is a new one.
And we're waiting for that new beginning so eagerly that we really are eager to be out of here and to be on with it. But of course, we need to stay here as long as we possibly can because we came to work through karma. And if we don't work through whatever it is we came to do, then we just have to be born again and go through those same things. Where if we do work through whatever we came to accomplish, we have pre-birth agreements with certain ones. And so then as we fulfill those pre-birth agreements, then we go on to other things. And if we don't fulfill them, then we come back and do them over again.
And those pre-birth experiences or agreements that we make on the inner before we come into this life experience prescribe, if you will, endings, issues that we need to resolve and come to an end so that we can move on to other things.
Yes.
It's like a deeper spiritual belief in predestination.
That's right. So we always see that new beginning as a wonderfully bright light before us, and we know that that is ever available to us.
But opening ourselves to look at endings in the same way that we look at beginnings is a change of thinking. It's a cataclysmic change of thinking for many people because many people view beginnings mostly as good and positive and endings as negative and final. And if we could just align our thinking so that we would understand that the two are the same, it's like both sides of a coin.
I know. It's like my little godson, his mother and father were leaving, and as they left, he did like this. Like, well, that's taken care of now. They're gone.
And that's what we need to do.
Yes.
We need to be willing to come to
That's gone.
shake the dust or clean our hands and move on to something else, and to look at every ending in that fashion and in that way, that it is no more than the end of an experience in a long line of experiences that make up our life.
Yes, and each is valuable, and each is desirable, and each is usable for our conscious mind to work through whatever we know that we need to work through.
And so the endings really create for us tremendous learning experiences, and they prepare us for the ultimate end, which is not an end at all, which is that process we call death.
Yes, a wonderful new beginning.
Yeah. In this time, of course, we have a shift in the consciousness of the planet and the collective consciousness, and I think that many people are changing their belief in what endings are.
That's true, and a lot of people lock into the negative aspect and put a negative aspect there when it really isn't applicable. So if we can think, as you said so beautifully in your talk, that an ending is really the opportunity for a new beginning, then if we can think in those terms, then we don't lament any ending, because we know that we've had that experience and we did the best we could, and now it's time for a new one, and so on we go.
You know, one of the comments that I made during the talk was that we need to honor our endings, and that speaks to exactly what you just mentioned. We don't need to lament them. We don't need to be sad for them, but we do need to acknowledge that they are changing points in our lives. And when we accept that and acknowledge it, we honor the end of anything because we know that it is a new beginning, that we're actually where we started.
And it's really hard to know that the end is there. I know when my younger son, Greg, went away to college, I cried for 2 weeks before he left, because I knew this was a great big ending in our lives. And it is. Going to college is an ending. That's a new beginning. Yeah. It's a wonderful new beginning.
And so often tears are a wonderful gift from God because they mark an end and they wash away the past and they open us to new and wonderful ways. Reverend Freelander and I have been sharing with you some concepts and ideas in embracing the endings of your life as new beginnings, and we hope that you found this information useful, and we look forward to seeing you next time.
Confident living comforts my heart. From such a blessing I can't depart. Confident living helps me expand visions of value, the kingdom at hand. Confident living, talent to win, gift of the Spirit moves from within.